Hello there. Welcome to episode 2 of my tutorial series for Cities Skylines 2. In this episode, I have a couple of topics on my plate. We are going to go over the city services system, and linked to that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the city income system, or at least the basics of what we have unlocked so far. I'm also going to expand the city grid a little bit, and I'm going to spend a couple of progression points that we've collected in between the episodes. Speaking about between the episodes, I've been expanding the city a little bit by just expanding the layout that I've been discussing in the last episode. So we have more industry down here, a little bit of commercial sector here in between, and a lot of low density housing over here, and some medium density housing on the top of that. This system can be expanded as we want to, but this is basically our first city district that we are working with. Now, first up, in this episode, I want to talk a little bit about city services. I didn't introduce any city services in the city whatsoever. I simply expanded it, and this doesn't really do your city well. While my income now is positive, my city isn't too happy. When you're hovering over here, you can see the happiness, and people are unhappy because of unreliable healthcare coverage and about the education services. They aren't happy either. So, services are being unlocked bit by bit. The further you progress down the road, the bigger your city gets, the more services get unlocked. Currently, we are seeing here the healthcare. We can build a clinic and a graveyard. We can build a landfill and a elementary school and a high school. Every one of these buildings has a monthly upkeep. You see that in that pop-up here. No, not pop-up. Tooltip is the word. So a high school would cost us 45,000 in a month. Currently, we have a net positive of 24,000 or 25,000, so it's not a problem at all to afford a bit of service. Also, I want to mention here, you shouldn't be too worried about spending money or being negative early on. You're getting a lot of money with every one of these milestones. You get a lot of cash on your hand, allowing you to sustain yourself through a lot of negative income. So it is wrong to be stingy at necessary services, but you shouldn't buy blindly into all of the services that you unlock. It's a little bit of a tricky thing, but that's what this series is good for. I'm going to help you through all of these things. So first up, we have now the positive income, and we have those services. In this episode, I'm going to go over a landfill with you because I personally feel like garbage disposal is very important. We're going to build a clinic. It's one of the cost intensive buildings, but I personally think it is a really good thing to have early on, especially since, like I said, we don't need to mind the expenses too much early on. And we're also going to build a couple of schools because education is very, very important. It's one of those things that I wouldn't recommend to stall at all, because the higher the education of your people in the city, the better the jobs that they can pick up, the more money they got, and the more wealth your city will accumulate. More details about that later. So, we're now seeing that our city is not really large enough. I don't want to build the waste dump right here where I am seeing it, so we're going to expand our city for the first time. For that, we're going to go into the map tiles mode, and per level upgrade, you get a couple of permits for new map tiles. We are going to buy these by just left clicking these. If you're unhappy with your selection, you can just right click the quadrant that you didn't like. So I'm buying these, get a bit of a readout what kind of resources you're buying in here as well, and I'm purchasing this. So now I have this area available for my city development. I have still 4 permits left. I'm leaving these right now, or, well, no. I'm going to buy these because I already know that I want them. I'm going to talk about these a little bit later. As you can see, the cost isn't too heavy. We have way more money than that. So our city has now more room to breathe. So whenever you buy new map tiles, you should always spend thoughts why you want these map tiles and what your plans are with these. I happen to have a couple of plans already, but I just wanted to mention that because I find that a very, very important thing to say here. Okay, we have now more room for our business, and we're going to take our business now down the road, namely the garbage business. So garbage does make a lot of pollution, like you would have expected, and therefore we're going to take that here. As you can see here, these things wonderfully align with these with the rest of the streets. You get a white line when you're on the same height. That sadly doesn't work all the time, but it's a really cool thing when it works. So we're going to place down the landfill now. So here we go. Landfill goes here, and this is the main building of the landfill. That circle is all of the area that we can designate as landfill. When you build the building, you have that landfill designator tool on your cursor. I recommend you one thing: cancel it, and then select the building, go over here to this area tool thing, and then you can drag and drop it. Way more effective than with the regular tool. I went crazy with that, with the basic tool, and this one is a breeze. So here we are now designating where the landfill should be. So I'm going to drag and drop an angle here. There we go. You can only fulfill up until the circle, and now we can just drag and drop it all the way there. Sometimes it's a little bit finicky around the corners. Whenever there's something red, you cannot do it. And this way, we're going to expand the landfill into that direction. Sometimes it gets cancelled. Guess I get too close to the electricity mast here. That could be very much the case. And as you see here, you can drag all the vectors till you are where you want to. Sometimes a little bit finicky, especially when you're close to other things. Here, it's the electricity masts that I'm getting too close to, and therefore it's a little bit miffy. So you can expand that as much as you want to. You don't need to fill the entire circle, but you can. So here at this point, we're going to go and use the area up until there. You can experiment with it like you want to, but I really like this tool, the way that how it works. The landfill now will send regularly cars to pick up the garbage from the households in the city. We'll dispose it here. It also processes trash, 1/2 ton per month. So if you are below that, you won't accumulate any trash in here. Good. So far, so good. That's the landfill. Now move over to the clinic. The clinic is a very, very life-saving business, and we're going to position it somewhere in the center of our city district, where it can reside in there. So I really like to position or build my city districts in a way that the services there are reachable for everybody. And when the services are too far away for everybody, it's usually a good sign that you should go for a new district. So the elementary school does produce noise pollution. Schools are just noisy places. So you wouldn't want to keep them too close to your low density housing. We are going to keep the schools in the vicinity of our medium density housing. So the elementary school goes here, and the high school, I'm going to plug it down here. With these buildings, it's really important to note that they are traffic magnets, because a lot of people are going in and out here. Same goes for the medium density housing. It's also more traffic heavy than other areas, so you want to avoid clumping these together at the same spot, because this way you would be also clumping together all the traffic, which wouldn't be necessarily a good thing. You can manage that, but you can make life for yourself easier. So these are the services that we built so far. I'm leaving out the death care aspect here. The graveyard is 55 grand per month, and it's also a really beautiful building. It brings well-being, and it brings indoor recreation because people like to visit the graveyard after all. Therefore, I'm delaying the building of that a little bit until my district here has grown a little bit more. The thing is, many services can be just imported from outside. So if somebody dies now in our city, we don't need to have our own graveyard because we can just export that necessity outside. What that means is somebody will bring a hearse over the highway over to your city, picking up the body, and that's that. So lacking services can always be fulfilled from outside sources. But when there's a fire in your city, you don't necessarily want the fire engine to have to come all the way from there. It's better if it starts directly in your city, isn't it? So there's services that you can stall, and there's services that you can't stall. Graveyard is a good example for one that isn't urgently necessary. It can be delayed until you have a better position for that. When we now check back to our finances, we see that we are now in a net negative. Don't worry too much about that. Not only do we get those financial influxes by the level ups there, also subsidies exist. The smaller your city, the more subsidies you gain. And on top of that, these buildings, these service buildings, they all yield experience points. Experience points are getting you closer to the next level up, and therefore they are always worth the pain. So here we have a bit of new necessities rising up. Always paint new areas when you see that your city is hungry. When you're not willing or not interested in expansion, you should never let yourself feel pressured by these bars. You can decide for yourself if you want to expand or not. It's merely an opportunity, let's call it like that. So one of the most wrong things that I could think of would be to pressure yourself in growing your city. So if you ever see that the growth meters in your city are rising, but you feel like, oh no, I still have to do this, or oh no, I still have to do that, this is not done, this is not done, get the things done that you have on your mind before bothering yourself with city expansion further. But if you happen to have nothing on your mind and you feel like the city is running perfectly, then always go for new zone designations and expand the areas. At least that's what I've been experiencing so far. I also want to point out that Cities Skylines is a game that you can play very, very, very differently, ranging from the recreation of realistic cities to just freestyling a city like I do it here. You really gotta be considering your goals when you're packing up this game. So, before we leave this episode, I want to go for the progression points next. So here we can unlock several services. There's really a lot of different services. It's kind of like a tech tree. So when you go and level up, you gain some new level up points, tech points, however you want to call it, which allow you to unlock new things. So for every service area, you gain the ability to unlock new service buildings. We can unlock here a college and a lot of other things. A couple of things I want to mention here. Basically, the rule of the thumb applies. The higher the costs in terms of points, the higher the cost in terms of dollars will also be. So that means if you want to unlock the incinerator plant, it costs around $1 million to just build that place. So keep your eyes on the low-cost buildings early on, because these will be the ones that you can actually afford when you're starting out with your city. There's no use in researching a water treatment plant that you can't afford. My first couple of development points, I personally always spend into roads first. So the thing I'm buying here are advanced road services, because that allows us to build a road maintenance facility, which is also a service building I highly recommend. And we're going to silence that ad. I don't know why they're still popping up. I disabled them. and we're unlocking large roads. After that, highways. After that, intersections or roundabouts. I personally prefer highways and roundabouts because the intersections aren't a pressing matter. Either way, we have now tools at our hands that are really, really important. The road maintenance facility, it is not a pressing matter to begin with, but I personally like to build it before the road status goes bad. Road status wears down over the course of the time with weather, with wear and tear, and the worse the status of your road, the slower the traffic will be, and the higher the accident probabilities will be. These guys do something against that. Therefore, I have them right from the get-go available, and I like it like that. So here, we also don't have a too huge discrepancy between our income and our expenses. That's pretty good. You should always try to not mind a negative too much, but you should also try to not let the gap grow too big. That's personally how I handle it, and my cities have been all pretty successful in that regard. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about are these large roads that we've unlocked. So we have to think next about the traffic connection and the traffic situation of our city. This will be something I'll be bringing up for the next episode as well, but here a couple of things before I leave this episode. You have the replace tool. So large roads, you should only build large roads where you feel like they're totally worth it. So here we are upgrading the entry level roads of our city because these are the high duty roads. When you're expanding roads, you can also always select whether you want to expand them into the right or the left side. So we're going to expand the entire exterior grid of our road network now into large roads. Only these. Don't go too crazy with them. There's no use in roads that are not being fully used. While the road maintenance cost might be ridiculously low, personally like to have it like that. Heavy duty nodes of traffic in the city go for large roads. Industry and medium and high density things take the medium roads, and low density takes the small roads. That's pretty much how I designate my roads. Of course, traffic and traffic management in this game is a high art, and there's always a lot of room for optimizing, so you should always be aware of the fact that there's always something you can do better. But this tutorial series is made to give you easy solutions that give your city some breathing room, you a couple of creative ideas to work with, and that's that. So I'm expanding here the entire outer grid of the city like that, and leaving the interior grid of the city like it was, so there won't be too much of a change. Here at the power plant, I have to expand not on the side I was expanding first, so can change that. Here, for example, at the landfill, we can't expand into that direction either. Sometimes you have to digress a little bit. Here it's the same thing with the road maintenance depot, but it's not really a big thing. So now our city is somewhat prepared for what's to come. It is still a pretty lackluster system with lots of weak spots, but it works for the time being. When you're interested in how well your traffic works, you can always switch on the info views and go for traffic. As you see here, I have a lot of orange spots. These are not necessarily good, not necessarily bad either, but they are always something you should be aware of because they are potentially a spot where things are going to go bad over the course of the time. But more about the whole traffic business in the next episode. I'm leaving it like that here. So in a nutshell, we now know how to handle city services. We're constantly unlocking new city services to further rebuild this city. And I'm going to go over the new services and all those things, of course, in the upcoming episodes as well. Feel free to leave me your questions down below. If you have anything else on your mind, add it in. I always love to hear from you folks. So leave a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and there's also a playlist link down there leading to all the other episodes of this series. And that's all I have to say for now. Have a wonderful day. See you soon. Bye bye.